101 different ways of doing sadhu. Okay, we have. You remember this lady? She ordained as a novice. Brr. Very good, very nice. Okay, we have some questions here for this evening. Here we go. Dear Ajahn, is it okay to chant Itipiso while doing walking meditation? Coming from a Buddhist tradition, we believe chanting Itipiso is an all-round good thing, especially for sickness and safety, etc. You can do that as long as you do it to yourself, because, in other words, if you're doing walking meditation in here and you're chanting Itipiso Bhagawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho, then you stop people becoming peaceful in meditation here. So if it's in a nice quiet place, you're just chanting it to yourself, just softly, Itipiso Bhagawa, that is fine. However, that's only to do that at the beginning, because if you do that towards the end of the meditation, it means it's just too coarse to be able to chant, because that's too much effort, it's taking your attention away from everything else, you're just chanting. So it's okay to do, but the most important thing is to be quiet and be still. So it's okay to chant at the very beginning, but then calm it down, and at the very middle, when you start getting peaceful, try not to chant at all. But for those of you who haven't been to one of my meditation retreats before, even better than chanting Itipiso when you're doing walking meditation is to do the very simple chant when you're doing walking meditation. As you move your left foot, you chant to yourself, I will die. The right foot, that's for sure. I will die. That's for sure. I will die. That's for sure. If you come from a Thai background, it's die, nair. Die, nair. If you come from Malaysia, Singapore, and you can speak Bahasa, mati pasti. Mati pasti. I will die. That's certain. How do you say that in Sinhala? Mama Maranawa. Mama Maranawa. Mama Maranawa. Now that stops your mind wandering off. It really focuses the mind. And then you come across the stage of fear. First of all, you come and you think it's a joke. You think that's ridiculous. No, Mama Merawa. But then, when you get past the ridiculous part of it, you realize this is serious stuff. You are going to die. That's absolutely certain. Mama Merawa. And then you start to get afraid. You come across your fear. And that's the fear of losing all your attachments, the people you love, your property, all your sort of plans for the future, that all goes. And then afterwards, when you go past the fear, you actually do let go of stuff. Why am I worried about all these plans? Why am I worried about my family, my finances, my health? I'm going to die anyway. And then you get very peaceful. And once you go past those stages, first of all joke, then fear, and you go past that, you get so peaceful. I will die, that's for sure. You've got nothing to worry about. So that's a lovely little meditation. It's actually much better than Itipiso. Itipiso may cure you of a cold or hay fever or something, but Mama Merawa or Mati Pasti or Die Nair or I will die, that's for sure, that will overcome your sickness of delusion and of craving. So give it a try, it's good fun. Ajahn, when the nimitta about to arise, my heartbeat started to increase, then it will not happen, what can I do? Okay, that's the fear coming up, excitement. It could be either of those two, fear, because this is powerful stuff, you're getting some nice meditation, or excitement, yes, nimitta, this is going to be blissful, beautiful. So the way to overcome that excitement or that fear is to do that little practice I call programming your mindfulness. So when you start your meditation, if your nimittas are coming up regularly, or you think there's a good chance you might get one in this coming meditation, Then you settle on your meditation cushion, you close your eyes, get yourself comfortable, and before you go any further, you make a resolution. When the nimitta comes, I will be calm. When the nimitta comes, I will be calm. When the nimitta comes, I will be calm. Or put it in your own words. You just put that little antivirus into your mind. And then you forget about it. And it's incredible just how well and effectively that works. Just, you've forgotten you've even put that program into your mind, but then the nimitta starts to arise, you're just about to increase your heartbeat because of excitement or fear, and then this suggestion of, when nimitta arises, I will be calm, it kicks in, and it stops the mind becoming sort of excited. It's like you're giving it an instruction, but at the very beginning, and it's just lodging there until the time it's needed, and then it will come up and stop your heart beating so fast. So the trick is, put it in your own words, repeat it 3 times at the very beginning, and listen to it with as much attention as you possibly can give it. Now, if you don't really pay attention to it, obviously it doesn't have any power. So, this is serious stuff. This will help you get deep into meditation. So, when the nimitta arises, my heartbeat will be calm. When the nimitta arises, my heartbeat will be calm. When the nimitta arises, my heartbeat will be calm. Or anything like that. And then you find it works. And you can use that programming of your mindfulness for so many other little problems you have in meditation, especially the problems which happen in the deeper stages of meditation. That's where that little trick works most effectively. So give that a try. And if you want to have a little exercise tonight to show just how powerful this is, do the old when you getting up tomorrow morning. I'm not sure what time you want to get up tomorrow morning. Suppose you want to get up for the chanting, 6 o'clock. You've got to get up at 5 to 6 to make it in here in time. So you tell yourself, I will wake up at, I will wake up at 10 minutes to 6. When you go to bed tonight, you tuck yourself in, get yourself nice and comfortable, and then you say, I will wake up at 10 minutes to 6. I will wake up at 10 minutes to 6. I will wake up at 10 minutes to 6. Say that to yourself, listen very carefully, and you'll be surprised that without an alarm clock, you wake up in the morning, what time is it? And you look at the clock and it's 1 or 2 minutes either side of 10 minutes to 6. It's incredible how effective, that sort of little programming on mindfulness is. First time I tried that, I couldn't believe it. It worked so well. I set my alarm clock 1 minute after I'm supposed to get up, just in case, to stop me feeling afraid. If it didn't work, I'm going to sleep in. So my alarm clock was a backup, but I never needed it. So give that a try, play with that, and you just show how powerful your mind is. You can, as long as you say it very carefully and you listen to it, it always works. And your mind has its own clock. I don't know how it knows it's 10 minutes to 6, but it knows. Anyway, dear Ajahn, in the case of rebirth, why is the world's population increasing? Does that mean new beings are being formed? No, it's just recycling the old beings. As you all know, the population, the human population is increasing, but the animal population is decreasing. The number of monkeys is going down. The number of human beings has gone up. So it doesn't need to be a rocket science to know where all those new beings have come from. And you just look at the youth of today. It's obvious. So, if you've got a little nephew or a little grandson and you say it's a little monkey, you don't know how truthful your words could be. It probably was a little monkey in the past. But it is actually true that the animals in the jungles have been decreasing in numbers enormously as we've been increasing. And you can actually see a correlation there. The higher animals are not that different from human beings. We have this conceit that we are so superior than all the other animals. And if you actually start to, I always like to ask people to, when you go home, not now, when you go home, if you can get onto Google and Google in the word Alex, A-L-E-X, the parrot, P-A-R-R-O-T, and you'll see some incredible videos of an African grey parrot who can not just talk a few words, but can have a conversation with people and use language intelligently. And it's, it's not sort of Hollywood, it's not some special effects. It's a real African grey parrot who can speak to you. You can ask it things and it answers back. And it uses it intelligently. And it also has attitude as well. It shows emotions in the way it uses its speech. First time I saw that, it was actually spooky. I thought, wow, this is weird. And it's only because I also was conceited, thinking that human beings are so superior to the animals. And when you see animals speak and express themselves intelligently, then you realize the gap between human beings and animals is not that great. So that's a nice little bit of evidence to convince you just how easy it would be for, say, African grey parrots to get reborn as humans. I've been getting some really good meditation, thanks, well done. However, lately I get this intense sensation which is very pleasurable, but too intense to sustain, at least for me. When I open my eyes I feel energized but mentally drained. I am trying to let go of the feelings, however they are very enveloping and hard to ignore. Any advice? Just go with them. No, the energy in your mind, feeling drained, that will soon disappear. The energy in your mind from the meditation will just take over and you'll be just so uplifted and energized, and you probably won't be able to go to sleep. And if that happens to anybody on this retreat, because of a very deep meditation, you go to bed in the evening and you don't feel like sleeping, that's natural. But don't just, get restless. No, just lay on the bed. Lay on the bed for 3 or 4 hours. Rest your body. Your mind will not be able to rest. In the sense it won't be able to turn off and go into the unconsciousness of sleep. You'll be aware all night. But just carry on meditating, laying down. Just being in the present moment. Don't worry about the clock. Thinking, oh, it's 1 o'clock, when am I going to go to sleep? Time has no meaning when you're starting to be in the present moment and be peaceful. Just enjoy the moment. Lay down there and just meditate. But because you're resting your body, the body feels really good. And your mind is just nice and peaceful. It's not wanting to go to sleep. It's not wanting to be awake. Just make sure all the wanting is gone. You're just content to be there. Content not to be asleep. And sometimes that happens. You catch up with the sleep later on, and actually you don't need that much sleep because you're very peaceful and energized. But so if you do have any intense sensations which are very pleasurable, please enjoy them. Other people listening to this are probably very jealous. Oh, why can't I get something pleasurable? And too intense to sustain, even just a tiny bit, I'd be happy for. So after a while, when you don't react to it, you don't try and own it, control it, grasp it, take photos of it, then it sustains itself. And the simile, which I always thought was the best, which I used and helped me a lot, was the simile of Ajahn Chah and the still forest pool. When any powerful, deep states of meditation start to arise, please remember this simile. That Ajahn Chah, like many of the monks of his generation, would go on, they called it tudong in Thai. It just literally meant just walking into the forest, into the jungles, into the mountains by oneself. In Simile it's called charika. The monks go wandering, not staying in any place except out in the wilds. And that was very common for monks like Ajahn Chah to do, but because it was very hot and sticky, you'd always try and find a lake or a river, or even a well would do, where you could wash yourself and then some robes and get some water, filter some water for drinking. One of the requisites the monks would always need to have was a water filter, because you would get the water from the lakes and the rivers. And so that he would often tell us that he would go out into these remote jungle places and wash and bathe and wash some robes, fill up his water container, and then he'd set up his mosquito net about 20 meters away from the, maybe not that far, maybe 10 meters away from the edge of the lake. And then instead of meditating, he would sometimes just keep his eyes open and wait for the jungle animals to come out. And in the days before Nature Channel, or National Geographic, whatever you call it, you could see those animals playing around, yourselves, see them live. But they would only come out to play, and I think you all know just how enjoyable it is and how cute it is to see animals in the wild playing with their young and messing around. And they exhibit many human qualities which make them quite sort of lovable. And so sometimes he would keep his eyes open when the animals would come out at dusk to drink and wash also. But he always would tell us that he had to sit perfectly still, because if he moved, the animals would know there was a human being there. And the animals would not know whether that was a nice, kind monk or whether that was a cruel hunter. Because people would hunt those animals and kill them. So the animals would come out and they would look around and sniff, and if they thought there was a human being there, even if they were really thirsty, they would not come out. They would go back into the jungle and hide, because they were afraid for their life. But if he was perfectly still, they'd come out of the bushes, look around, especially sniffing. They would be able to smell the human being. And then they would not notice him because he was too still. And then they would go and play by the pool, and he would delight in their antics, like you do see on the TV. And he had many sort of wonderful evenings just watching the animals play. And he would often tell us that sometimes he was so still that after the ordinary animals would come out, the bears, the tigers, and the civet cats and all those ones, then some very strange animals would come out. Animals which were incredibly beautiful but very, very rare. And they would only come out when he was perfectly still, because they were so sensitive. If he just moved and said, wow, or sort of, wow, they would notice it, and they'd run off and never come out again for days. But when it was perfectly still, those animals would come out, and they would play by the still forest pool. And those very refined animals, that's like nimittas and jhanas. Incredibly beautiful, but they only come out when you're perfectly still. It is as if, when they come into your mind, they look around, is anyone watching us, is anyone there? And if you move, if you say, wow, they'll run away again, and your nimittas will disappear. And that's even more so with the jhana. These are very beautiful, rare animals which live in the jungle of the mind, and they only come out to play with you when you're perfectly still. So instead of saying be still, that gives you an image which you can imagine. You're an Ajahn Chah, and these great animals come out, you're perfectly still, you don't move a muscle. And then they will come out and play. It's a very helpful simile about when you do get intense pleasure, to sustain it, you have to be still, perfectly still, and it will keep on going. From your experience, how many hours minimum should one do meditation to have a chance to reach jhana? Thank you. It doesn't work that way. So sometimes it's not as if, okay, if I do that many hours, can I be ensured jhana? It is like studying. Sometimes people think, well, if I keep studying for my degree, then I'm sure to get a first. It's not that way. Some people are just so smart, they hardly study at all, and they get first-class honours, doing hardly anything at all. It's not just the hours you put in. It's the quality of your meditation rather than the quantity is most important. It's the wisdom rather than the perseverance. So there's no rule there. You cannot say so many hours and you're guaranteed. It's just, sometimes you can meditate for years and get nowhere. And then suddenly something clicks and you press the, I call it pressing the letting go button. And you get into a jhana and it's just, wow. It's so easy. So it's nothing to do with the hours. Everything to do with your wisdom. These are states of deep insight. And so the only way to actually to do this is actually be incredibly smart and sharp and understand what's going on in here. It's not effort. It's not length of time. It's wisdom. That's why I talk so much, to try and convey some of that wisdom. It was actually Ajahn Brahm. He taught the sutta class at Dhammaloka last Sunday. And he said he was teaching the Chula Gosinga Sutta, and they always mention the jhanas, so they're everywhere. And he just noticed for the first time, even here, you read the sutras again and again many times, and suddenly something which has always been there, we never noticed before, just came up at him. And he said, wow, because they call the jhanas stages of insight. Stages of jnana dasana, of insight. And he'd never sort of seen that before. There's no such thing as samatha vipassana. The jhana is a stage of insight, because you've been able to let go. Anyway, dear Ajahn, when I sit to meditate, usually on a chair, after a little while I feel a twitching feeling in my legs, below the knees. I stretch my legs to get rid of it, but it keeps coming back. Is this something unusual? Thank you, Metta. No, it's nothing unusual. You get many sort of interesting experiences in your body when you're meditating. It can be a twitch, it can be something moving, it can be the body twisting or the body rocking. And I've often said, if that happens, you just be an observer, don't try and control anything and enjoy it. Because that's usually some energy in the body which has been locked up is being released, or some healing is happening. Especially when you start to get peaceful in the meditation, when you start to let go of control and everything starts to relax, then incredible healings can happen to you. You know, things can twitch, and all that is there's some locked up energy is having to be released. You know, sometimes the body can twist around, as that case over in the North Perth Redemptorist Monastery many years ago, where this woman, somebody got me out of meditation because she was concerned. One of the people meditating was so contorted. I mean, it did look very, very dangerous. You know, I cannot show you what she did. She was really badly twisted around during meditation. And I was so concerned as a teacher, I waited for her to come out of meditation, took her aside and say, how are you? She said, I feel wonderful. Well, what do you mean? You were twisted all over the place. I couldn't do that. I'd break my bones. I'd have to take me to hospital if I did something like that. And then, of course, I understood. I said, okay, I'll get it now. Did you have a car accident? She had a very, very bad car accident. She had. And she was lucky to survive. In hospital for a long time. Okay, understand now. Because her body was so badly injured that when she had let go of her body and it just was doing this by itself, the body twisted around to this position which it needed to give some healing to itself. Because it was a very bad accident, I don't know what injuries were done, the body knew exactly what to do and how to twist around and what position so energy could flow to those injured parts and do some healing. And that's why she felt so wonderful afterwards. And incidents like that show me that your body is much wiser than you are. It knows what to do. You don't know what to do, so get out of the way. So they say in Australia, butt out and let the body twist around. And you know it's the right because afterwards you feel so good. And you feel really relaxed. Wow, I feel really healthy. And the other one which happens often on this is hot spots in the body. I don't mean like hot because it's a hot day today. I mean it's part of your body which is unusually really warm, like a little fever going on in that area. And that is always wonderful because that's always some healing going on. You know, this lady, she had her shoulders, she said, were really like on fire, on fever. It was nice fever, but you know, it was really, really hot. And so she wondered what happened. And I said, whiplash. How did you know, Ajahn Brahm? You have psychic powers after all. And unfortunately I had to disappoint her. So it's not psychic powers, I just know how these things work. Whiplash is the most common injury to the neck and shoulders. And I just took an educated guess, and the healing was going on there. Because you had that injury, and now you've let go of the body, become relaxed and rested, and energy is flowing to where it's needed. But you can't do that. If you're in control, you stop these things happening. That's why a lot of times when people are meditating, they get very peaceful. And then you're not really paying too much attention to the body. The body's relaxed, you're just watching the beautiful breath or nimittas or something. And there's incredible things happening in the body. They're always really positive. So when that happens to you, if the body is twitching or things are moving or you feel like you're rocking or something is getting very hot, please don't interfere. Your body's doing something very wonderful for your health. Could you please tell us more about anxiety? Why so many people have it? The other night you have mentioned that if you find where in the body an anxiety is located, by massaging the spot you can get rid of it. Can you please tell us more how it works? Also, you said that so many people are attached to their pain and anxiety so they don't want to let it go. Yeah. Does it mean that it's their choice to live with the pain and anxiety or let it go? Now, first part of that question, why do people have anxiety? A lot of times because we're control freaks and because we have been conditioned, always never to think we're good enough and to be really fearful. I remember my parents saying, don't go out at night, the bogeyman will catch you. I didn't know what a bogeyman was, but it was something terrible, as if I went out at night without my parents' permission, some monster will come up behind me and eat me. And it's amazing just how many people, how many parents instill such fear in their kids and do lifelong traumatic damage to their kids. Because they always create fear in people. And that fear for some people is enormous anxiety. Kids need to be reassured. Don't control them through fear. When your father's going to come home, if you don't behave now, you'll be in big trouble. Trying to control the kids through fear. And all that ever taught me, even in school, the cane, you get caned if you were bad, and it's just fear. The only thing I ever learned from that was not to get caught next time, to be more sneaky. I didn't understand what I was doing wrong, I was too young. But what I really did understand was, don't get caught again. So I became very smart in avoiding all the people in authority. So you never got caught. That's what I learned. And that's not the right thing, but we instill so much fear in people. Most people can take that, but sometimes it gets fear upon fear upon fear, and we have such negativity to the future that people get so afraid that they can't even get out of bed. And it's an unnatural fear, it's an illogical fear, just like after the bombings of the underground trains in UK, that people didn't want to go in the underground trains anymore because there was a great place for a terrorist to let off a bomb. And then in the newspapers they were saying, look, come on, get real. There's more chance of getting killed on the way to work driving your car than about 20, 30 times more than if they have an attack on the London Underground once a year. So it's much more dangerous to get in the car. We don't even think about that. But one big terrorist attack on a train, and we all remember that. Even going in an aircraft is still one of the safest forms of transport. But how many people refuse to go on Malaysian Airlines now? And it's just totally ridiculous thinking the way that fear is irrational. Because it's conditioned into us. And so that anxiety is irrational, and it can cripple some of us, and it is played by many people. When you are afraid, you do feel a little bit alive. This is why you go to these horror movies, or people like to hear ghost stories. And why do people like that? They like to be afraid because it brings them a sense of aliveness in their dull lives, because they haven't really they haven't done other ways of encouraging and empowering your mindfulness. When you are afraid, you are very mindful. I remember once getting up early in the morning in Thailand at 3 a.m. because to start the chanting I was always sleepy, but I noticed there was something on my chest, and I got my flashlight. It was a centipede. And those centipedes in Thailand, they really hurt. They hurt more than snakes. As soon as I saw a centipede right on my chest, I was really awake straight away. I wasn't sleepy at all. Fortunately, I could actually take it off. It never bit me. But for the rest of the morning, I had no trouble with sloth and torpor. I was perfectly straight, perfectly awake. It was just fear had woken me up. And that's why a lot of times people like fear, because it does wake you up. But then what happens after a while is just the fear becomes what's the word now? It becomes a pathology that, you always have that fear and you live in fear, and it gives you such anxiety, you're afraid of everything. It's not a normal fear anymore. And then when it's nice to be able to stop that before it gets so intense and starts to cripple your lives. But if it does come up, it's pretty easy to overcome, simply because you notice as being a meditator, being mindful, every emotion that you have in your mind has a corresponding feeling in the body. Everyone does. When you're in love, there's a feeling in your body, a beautiful feeling in the body. When you're angry, there's another tension in the body. It's a totally different feeling than when you're feeling grief, or when you're feeling guilty, or when you're feeling jealous. These are different feelings in the body, but because we're not aware, we're too busy doing other things, we don't even notice those feelings when they manifest, and we don't even notice the difference between them. So that's why when you have anxiety, it's a particular type of feeling, usually in your chest area. So you have to really get to know it first of all. And for me, the test is, which is a test which means you've mindfully enough for this to work, and it's also shows you how to become mindful enough, is to be able to locate the feeling exactly where it is in your body, to the centimetre, and to be able to describe that feeling to a complete stranger in detail. Not just, it hurts. How does it hurt? What type of pain? Does it come? Does it go? Does it change? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it tight? Is it tense? To actually almost like to give a 2-page essay on the feeling, so you really, really know it. And once you've got that degree of mindfulness, you're so aware of it, then the next part, again, is very simple. You use compassion and kindness, the great, great healer. And just massage is one of the easiest ways of doing that. Or, you might get some of this hot oil, just warm oil from a spa and pour it off. Anything which gives you this beautiful kindness and softness to that part of the body. So the physical feeling gets less and less and less and less. You're relaxing the muscles, the skin, whatever else is there. And that becomes all loose and easy and relaxed, like happens if you go to a spa. And then when the physical counterpart to the emotion goes, so does the emotion. The anxiety's gone. And it's a brilliant way of doing things, and it's amazing what it works. And I say that Dr. Mukta did that in her hospital. Poor lady, sort of weeks in hospital, in oxygen, because she was so anxious. She needed oxygen to breathe. Trying all the medications, nothing worked. And just as a last resort, because also I think she was, wanting to get home, to her family, and I'll just try this. You know what it is sometimes when you're really busy, you just throw these things out, never realizing how powerful they are. And the next morning, she said she went to the hospital, and the patient had the oxygen mask off. What do you do without the oxygen mask? I feel fine now, it worked, I want to go home. It was a really beautiful little story, how someone with real strong anxiety, she was hospitalized. Medication never worked, but a simple thing like mindfulness and kindness onto your body, how that overcomes the anxiety. And it works with other things as well, even anger. If you've got an anger problem, where does the anger manifest in the body, and what's it like? Can you write me sort of 2 pages in detail of what it feels like when you have an anger attack? If you can, then you're mindful enough. Then just massage that area, be kind to it, whatever it is. When the physical feeling goes, your anger goes too. That gives you a way of letting go of these things. Grief. You may have lost someone really close to you. What does it feel like? Where in the body? Get to know it. Get to know it so well, you can describe it to your best friend in detail. And then find some way of relieving the physical feeling. When the physical feeling's gone, the emotion of grief has gone too. Really powerful, and it's something you do yourself. You don't need to have a therapist, which costs lots of money to do this. You get a very good deal coming here. State-of-the-art sort of psychotherapy, all for free and everything else. Please explain in simple terms the difference between Samadhi and Jhana. Okay, Samadhi is stillness, and Jhana is called Sama Samadhi, the correct, perfect, right stillness. So Samadhi is more general. It can be any degree of stillness, but Jhana is that special part of stillness, so deep, so incredibly still, that many things vanish, such as your body, such as the five senses, such as even your will, and you're incredibly still and very, very peaceful and very blissed out. The stillness, the samadhi, is the most important. This is deep stillness, otherwise called jhanas. And because it's so still, your mindfulness has got such a boost of energy, it's incredible, that you're incredibly blissed out as well. Amazing ecstasy.
And samatha?
Samatha is the process. Samadhi is the result. Samatha is the process. That's samatha you can call doing samadhi. When you get to the end, that's called stillness. Samatha is calming, making it still. Dear most venerable Ajahn Brahm, isn't Mara the true lord of this world of the senses? He thinks he is, but he's not the true lord. The true lord of the senses, like anyone else, is the Buddha. He can actually overcome Mara. He can get way beyond Mara. But Mara likes to think that he's the boss. Interestingly, a he, Mara, so the world is sexist after all. So it's the person who controls. And so he thinks he controls and does a pretty good job of it, but it's so easy to release yourself from that control. If you understand the Dhamma. Are we living in a spiritual prison caught up in the perfect delusion of I am, and is craving the sustenance of Mara's army? It's pretty good, yeah. Because it's true you are in a prison. I gave many similes before. Life is like being in a prison. You've been born in a prison, lived all your life in a prison, so you think you are free. You don't know anything else except life in prison. And this prison has 5 walls, called seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting and touching. And you've got a guard who never lets you sit still for a moment. That's called will. Always making you do things. And you assume this person called will is your friend. Actually, will is Mara. You want to sit still and they say, no, you've got to get up, you've got to have a cup of water. You're resting and say, no, it's time to get up. You've got to be doing things. There's poor people in this world, you've got to help them. You've got to ring your family, there may be some email for you. You can't sit still, you've always got to do something, even when you're meditating. Now you've got to watch the breath. No, don't watch the breath. Just let go instead. No, don't let go. Go into some walking meditation. All the reason why you are restless, because there's something called the will, which never lets you be still, which is always telling you what to do. Have you ever been driving in a car and your partner is a control freak who always tells you, don't drive so fast, turn to the left, put your indicator on, let the other person in. That's like Mara. That's what you do to yourself. You meditate, you're just watching the breath. No, you're not watching it well enough. How about doing something else? No, let's do something else. Now I'm watching the breath, but I can also start thinking about the book I'm supposed to be translating or whatever. And you never allow to be still. That's called will. And we all imagine that is our friend and that we use our will for good purposes. Never understanding that will is out of our control and is actually not a friend but our biggest enemy. And you realize that because after a while you get so still, sooner or later in deep meditation, will disappears and it's so wonderful without will. And everything you ever wanted in life you get. Not by wanting it, but when the wanting vanishes. And it's an incredible experience. And you realize wanting was a problem to begin with. And these 5 senses were a prison. And I was thinking, okay, in the prison, there's this really hot girl. So I'm going to go and marry her and have lots of little babies inside my prison. And that's going to be wonderful. And if I work very hard, I can upgrade to get a very good prison cell. On the cliffside, a big mansion. And I can get a nice Ferrari car to drive in prison. And I can be really famous and appear on prison TV. And I've made it in life. I can be the supermodel which are going to exhibit all the latest convict uniforms. And some of the girls' clothes are like convict uniforms. They must really hurt. You're just so tight inside, like being trussed up in manacles. Sometimes I can see them on people's hands. They call them bracelets. I call them handcuffs. And we always think that this is wonderful, we're getting somewhere in the world. They even have like cricket matches in the prison between the Sri Lankan wing and the Australian wing. You get so excited who wins this cricket match, but you are still in prison, all of you. And then somebody comes along and they say, look, have a look under the bed, there's a tunnel. And you see the tunnel was built by this ex-prisoner, this ex-con called Sakyamuni. Anyone, no, what's he doing? Prison's okay for me, but actually you decide to give it a try and just go a little way through the tunnel. And it's called the Eightfold Tunnel. You go a little way and yes, it's quite nice. It's much better than prison. So you go a little bit further, and a little bit further, and a little bit further. And the more you go out of the prison, you see at the very end a light at the end of the tunnel. The nimittas. And you go through the nimittas. And you're in the jhanas, you're out of prison. Into the realm of the mind. So free and happy. It's not out of prison yet, but it's at least mostly out of prison. You're out of the five senses. In this incredible free world called the realm of Rupa Loka and Arupa Loka. The realms of the mind. I thought, wow, why did anybody tell me this existed? And you remember, people did tell them me existed. There was these prison visitors called the monks and nuns who came and taught us how to meditate. We thought they were crazy guys in these stupid brown robes. They just should get a life. Enjoy prison for goodness sake. Why are you trying to escape all the time? And life is like that, a prison. And the prison simile is very wonderful because, when you do find that tunnel and you see it's beautiful at the end, you still don't want to go. Because it's scary. You've got used to prison and you're pretty good at living in prison and getting by. And many are very successful in prison. Many people are very famous in prison. They're celebrity prisoners. They're on the TV and they're on the magazines and they get lots of money which they can spend only in jail. And the idea of leaving prison when you've lived so long in there is very scary. That's why that when you do get into deep meditation, it is scary because you're leaving a place you've got used to, this world and these five senses. But just go a little bit further, it's nice out of jail. That's just why people are afraid of letting go of pain, or grief, or even anxiety. It's like a person who's been in prison for many years. Tomorrow they're getting released. They don't want to get released. It may be painful, but they're used to the pain. They know it. And life which is strange, which is totally different than whatever they've known before, no, I don't want that. That's why if you really want to be enlightened, if you want to be wise, if you want to see the Dhamma, it takes courage. You have to be so devoted to the truth, doesn't matter what it costs, I'm going to find that truth. Even if it scares the pants off you. So a few people go down those tunnels. The tunnel's in every cell. You go down there, it's a bit scary, but it's nice. And basically it's the happiness, the bliss, the piti sukha. Without that, no one would go down those tunnels. It's every time you meditate, you get a bit more peaceful, a bit more happy. That's why many people today meditate. They don't meditate to get jhana, to get enlightened. They meditate because they lessen their stress, they get more healthy, they enjoy it. So that is, like the first incentive. And as you meditate more and more, you enjoy it more and more, it gets more peaceful, more blissful, and you keep on going. It's the bliss which overcomes the fear. I often said that, there was a time when, you could see jhana was just over here, and I was over here. It's too damn scary, I can't do that. But, it looks really nice. But this is really frightening, but it's beautiful over there, but I can't do this, but it's lovely, and I'm afraid. What the hell? And you go for it, because the bliss, just overcomes the fear. Dear Ajahn, if humans don't offer merits to devas, is there any other way they can improve their merits? Devas, how will they improve good karma? Eventually devas will move to a high realm or return as lower beings. Thank you. No, they don't. Many heavenly beings hang out places like this, they listen to the Dhamma. And people have this weird idea that heavenly beings can't get enlightened. You just read the sutras. Many times heavenly beings were actually taught by the Buddha. The Ratana Sutta, Mahamangala Sutta, the Buddha taught the Devas. And even when the Buddha was teaching lay people, or even monks, the Devas were listening, just checking in what the Buddha was saying. And many of those Devas listened to what the Buddha was saying and became enlightened. So don't ever think that, if you get reborn in the heavenly realm, that's it, you're not going to get enlightened anymore. Just check it out. Many Devas did get enlightened. So it's possible. In the Parinibbana Sutta, the Buddha said, "Be an island unto yourself, take refuge in the Dhamma." Why 2,500 years later are we still taking refuge in a dead person? Also, taking refuge in the Sangha can be dangerous, as you don't know if they are Aryas. In fact, until they get rid of sense desires and ill will, they can be dangerous. That's a very good point, because some people are just, even in the Theravada, but especially, please excuse me, in the Tibetan tradition, because some of them, they say, you don't really see this so much in the Theravada tradition. If a monk has a mistress, and they say it's a mistress, and they know they're doing something wrong, but sometimes in the Tibetan tradition they say, well, if you have sex with me, that will improve your spiritual power. And that is just so gross. That's against the law, for a teacher to have sex with their disciple, and even more so with a monk. And I say this because a lot of times, I don't know how many times, women have come to me and they said, "Is it okay for a monk to have sex with their disciple?" I said, "Of course it's not. Who told you that?" I said, "My guru told me." And there's a huge amount of abuse, and it gives Buddhism a very, very, very bad name. That's totally illegal, wrong. You should go to the police if anything like that ever happened. So, it is a danger, because sometimes it's quite senior gurus do this sort of stuff. And you just need one to misbehave, and it just taints the whole sort of religion. And people think, all the monks are the same. Even when we were building this place here, the builders here, the workmen, we went past their canteen once, and they were talking, we heard them talking about what the monks do on the weekend. And this is what they said: they get alcohol in and they invite prostitutes from North Beach up into Bodhinyana Monastery for the weekend. This is what they were saying. They didn't know at all anything about monks and what we get up to. We're actually, you come and stay with us. That you see the monks all the time. We can't hide anything from you guys. So you see we're real good monks, and we don't mess around like that. So it's very nice to know that. But unfortunately, there are some monks who do misbehave. One of the reasons for that is because if a monk does think that, okay, the meditation's not very good, they've made the wrong choice, they shouldn't have become a monk, they should disrobe. And don't ever think that if a monk disrobes, they're a bad monk. And don't sort of criticize them for that. They gave it their very best shot. And where is Burr? You know how hard it is, to be a novice. How long were you a novice? 9 days. 9 days. It's tough, isn't it? Yes. Yeah. And so some of these monks, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, that's really tough. And so they get through that much. Well done. You made it for 4 or 5 years. Great job. So what happens then is it means you don't discourage or stop monks or nuns from disrobing when they're in the wrong place. They may have made a decision when they're young to become a monk or a nun, and it was a good decision for them, but then it didn't work for them. And the problem is when there are monks who shouldn't be monks because they've lost their inspiration and they stay as monks, those are the ones who get mistresses and girlfriends. And that's one of the problems there, because we don't let them disrobe with dignity. Especially in Sri Lanka. In Thailand they disrobe with dignity much more, but in some countries like Burma, no, you disrobe, you're a failure, you're a loser, which means that they keep on as a monk or as a nun, and then they just have affairs. So it's much better to have people leave. and then make them be happy. I'd rather have a happy layperson than an unhappy monk. It's obvious. So we take refuge, be an island unto yourself. But that didn't mean just not sort of having any teachers or going for advice for people, because sometimes people think, an island unto myself means I am better than everybody else. I get so conceited, I don't need any advice. I'm just going to do it all by myself. And you know that you do need help. You do need people to talk to get advice from, to get some reflections from. And so that's why we do have refuges. And getting refuge in the Buddha. Sometimes people say the Buddha is dead. You get this from Christians. Jesus lives, the Buddha's dead. What do you mean Jesus lives? He got crucified. He's supposed to have died. But anyway, that's not the point. There is a very wonderful saying, in the Dhamma. He said, the one who sees the Dhamma sees the Buddha. The one who sees the Buddha sees the Dhamma. So you can see the Dhamma in today's world. So therefore you can see the Buddha. So in that sense, the Buddha does live. Buddha not the person, but the principle. And that's exactly what they mean by Jesus when they say Jesus lives, the principle. The essence of a Buddha. The Buddha is not the person. It's something much deeper than that. And that's where we take refuge in. So, when I see a Buddha statue there, it inspires me. Because not just the example and lifestyle of the Buddha, but this is quite frankly, just when you really see what this Dhamma really is, you get incredibly inspired by not just the depth of the Buddha's understanding, but his incredible ability to explain it. Sometimes, you have some experience and you want to put it into words, and you just struggle. How can I say this? What similes and metaphors can I say? And you know what the Buddha did? And crikey, that fellow was a genius in the ability to explain things. So, your admiration for that person and the admiration for his teachings really sort of increases. So that's why it's very easy to go for refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and also the Sangha as well. This wonderful vehicle. And sometimes people say, what's the easy way to get enlightened? Become a monk or a nun. It's all designed for this. So, you can become enlightened as a layperson, just the same you can actually get to Adelaide by walking. But I wouldn't encourage you to walk if you want to go to Adelaide. Get an aircraft, they're pretty cheap these days. So, this was a vehicle, like an aircraft, designed to make it easy to travel long distances. And this vehicle of the Sangha was a vehicle which was designed and set up by the Buddha to make it easy to travel to Nibbana. You can go other ways, but this is the easy way. So the real refuges is the Dhammas seen in the Vinaya and in the Suttas. Once you remove the bits that were added after the passing away of the Buddha, such as the bit about what to do about women in the Parinibbana Sutta. All of this sort of stuff, you've got to be very careful what you think is added. So don't think it's added because it is embarrassing as a Buddhist, or because it doesn't fit what you would like to believe as a Buddhist. When I went through these things, you had to be intellectually rigorous. In other words, I couldn't dismiss something because I didn't agree with it. I couldn't say it was added later because it was shameful because I was a modern Westerner. I had to have some better reasons than that. And some of the other reasons was, the language was much later than the rest of the passage. Or, you could actually see where it was taken from somewhere else and put into this place. You had to have some good reasons. Or you compared it, like many monks are doing today. You compare those passages, with other similar recensions of the same sutta, say from the Chinese versions. You compare what the Chinese have, what the Pali has, and then if there's a difference there, then that might have been added. So be very careful when you're studying the suttas. You can't put your own ideas into it. Otherwise, you just miss everything. 1. Dear Ajahn Brahm, who decides what is right action and what isn't right action? For example, if a country's laws allow me to purchase marijuana or purchase the services of a prostitute, then can that be considered wrong action? what is my intention is just to have a good time between consenting adults. Exactly, that's a very good point. No, but sometimes is it consenting adults? Because sometimes consent also involves some coercion. The coercion that maybe a very poor woman is doing this because she doesn't want to do it, but because she's got some pimp who's going to beat her up if she doesn't do as many clients as the pimp asks her, or she's doing that to feed a drug habit. So sometimes when we say consent, is it really consent, or is there some element of coercion there? And this is one of the reasons you have to be very, very careful. That person you are paying for sex with, is it really her free choice? Or his free choice too? Or is it some coercion going on there? And there you can see there's some lack of ethics there, if there's coercion going on. You're having a good time, are they having a good time as well? Sometimes it is okay. Sometimes, that I know in olden days in Thailand, the prostitution was very open and very free. And so people wanted to do that, and they were respected for doing that. And I always remember just what I was impressed with, being a Westerner, when I first went to Bangkok. Just a few weeks after, I never got the invite, but a few weeks after I went into Bangkok, the monks were going to Pat Pong Road. Pat Pong Road was a red light district of Bangkok. And they were going in there to the brothel for dana, for the meal. Once a year, all the prostitutes in Pat Pong Road, they would dress modestly, and they would tidy up the brothel and invite the monks because they needed to make merit as well. And the monks would never be that proud or arrogant to say, no, these are working women, why they're doing this, I'm not sure whether it... In those days there wasn't really that much coercion. The crime didn't really get into it that much as far as I know. But the monks said, no, everyone has the chance to do good karma. We're not going to be so snooty. We're only going to go to members of the royal family or rich people's houses to get our food. Anyone, if you're a taxi driver and you want to invite us to your house, we'll go there. If you're a prostitute, we'll go to your house for the day, and they would give the monks their food, their rice and their curries, ask for the 5 precepts for the day, and then they would sort of do the chanting, sprinkle the holy water. They would give gifts to the monks, and then the monks would leave, and the pirikura, and the monks would go home again. So once a year they could do their religious services. And I thought that was really cute, because it was not being discriminatory and not judging people. Sometimes religion can be so judgmental to people who are in these situations. Why they're in these situations, I don't know, but they're there, and so we should be kind to them. I thought it was actually beautiful. I was inspired by that. So, purchasing marijuana, is that right action or wrong action? If it's a drug, it doesn't matter what the law states, it does mess up your mind. If it is marijuana for medical use, that's a total different sort of ball game. If it's going to relieve your pain and make life more bearable for you, fine. And so that's why the legalized marijuana for medicinal use, don't see any problem with it. But if it's just for recreational use, what does it mean by recreation? It means you lose all your mindfulness, and you don't know what you're doing. It's like another form of intoxicant. And whatever lessens your mindfulness, so lessens your idea of what's going on around you, is always very dangerous. Which is one of the reasons why that if you have smoking marijuana, you're also liable to get busted by the police for intoxicated driving, because you're a danger to others and to yourself. It's not just you having fun, because I've been to too many funeral services of people who've been killed by drug drivers. And the worst I ever went to was one, it probably is up there as the saddest funeral service I ever performed. And it was this young Chinese girl, maybe about 20 years ago. She got a scholarship here to Perth to study. She just completed her studies, and invited her parents from mainland China. Remember, in those days, parents would only have one child. This was their child. They'd worked so hard, sacrificed so much, to get their kid a really good education. She'd risen to the occasion and made it to the West, finished her degree, and they came up for the ceremony. This was her life's accomplishment. And she was walking down the road in Gosnells, where a drunk driver lost control of the car, slammed into her, killed her instantly. She was on the sidewalk, and her parents could not speak a word of English. And I did a funeral service for this girl because she was a Buddhist. And just the despair, despair is just probably just an understatement of what I could see on their faces. Their whole life had been lost. Everything which they'd sacrificed, and they really did a huge amount of sacrifice to get their girl this far, and she just was about to get her degree, and her life was wiped out by somebody who was just having a good time and not thinking about others. And that really affected me. That's one of the reasons why, you have a good time, but what's its effect on others? If it has a bad effect on others, that means it's wrong action. It's not just what happens to you, it's what happens to others when you're intoxicated. Anyway, I see through your embedded commands, monk this and monk that, creating an aristocracy and removing our power from taking charge of our own life. Are you aware you do this? Are you aware you resist my power to make you good? You can't actually command anybody to do this and do that. Haven't you been listening? I've been telling you to let go, not to control. Now that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be becoming free. So just like I will never command anybody, monk this and monk that, let's say layman this or layman that or Australian this. Monk is just a terminology. So it's only an idea in your head. So be careful of the ideas in the head. Embedded commands. That's what you have created, not me. Are you aware of that? Dear Ajahn, why is it that some children can remember their past lives and others can't? Thanks. It is sometimes children who remember their past lives seem to have had very violent deaths. No, not always, but a lot of the times. As if the violence of their death has created a very, very strong memory, like a trauma, which is very easy to recall in the first years of their life. But it's not always the case, that sometimes children have had a much calmer, quieter sort of death, and they can still remember them. But why some can and why some can't, it could be just the length of time between their human lives. Because if you try and recall a previous life and you've been like an animal, I think somebody once did this, and they find it very hard to describe what it was like. I think, what were they? I think they were a horse or something. What it actually felt like to be a horse. The language was very hard, and it's also that it was very hard to convey those feelings to human beings. There was a language barrier. So, if you've been an animal before, it's very hard to actually describe that. Or if you've been a heavenly being before, it's hard to describe that. So it would probably be the case that kids whose previous life was recent and had a very strong effect on this life, then they may be able to remember it. But many kids who do remember their past lives, sometimes their parents discourage it. And I was told this in Thailand, especially in the country parts of Thailand, that if a kid does start to remember their past life, they're actually beaten to discourage them, because the culture says this is going to be a great problem for them, so suppress it, this is your new life, forget about your old life, even if you get punished for it. And that is actually, obviously, means many kids who could do not, because they're afraid of punishment. And it sort of beats it out of them, basically. until it disappears naturally. And in other places, it's not so believed. If a kid comes along and says that they lived before, they think you're crazy. So when you take away those who are suppressed and those who are just not believed, the number of people which actually come up, the number of kids who say they believe their past lives, is reduced quite enormously. So that's one of the reasons why some people don't remember, because they're afraid to say. I always remember this one kid. He was one of the kids who was part of Ian Stevenson's 19 cases? Or 12 cases suggested of reincarnation. And I saw him in the old Sri Lankan temple in London. I gave a talk on reincarnation. This about 17-year-old boy came up, and he was one of these people who'd remembered his past lives. And what he told me was fascinating. He said, that was the worst thing I ever did. Tell my mummy and daddy of my previous life. Because it got investigated, it was in the newspapers. He went to school in London, and all his friends in the school playground bullied him. Because that's what kids do in school. If they find some part of you which is a little bit strange and different, they can be very cruel. You've got a big nose, and you can never live that down. You remember your past lives, and where's your old wife? And he just had hell in school. And he said, I wish I'd never done that. It's interesting that that's why many kids will not tell, because they get picked upon for being different. I heard that laymen at most can attain non-returner, but not arahat. Is that true? Why? What is missing in a layman? A lay person can attain arahat as well. But if you do become an arahat as a lay person, you don't fit into the lay world at all. So immediately you have to come off and become a monk or a nun. You just join the Sangha, because this is where you feel you belong. In the same way that sometimes you're in some sort of job and you realize, this job doesn't fit me, I don't belong here. And that's exactly what happens when you become sort of an arahat. You don't belong in the world. Money, sex, movies, ownership of houses and stuff, this is not where you belong. So you join the Sangha. That's what usually happens. Dear Ajahn, Devadatta Thero is supposed to have possessed psychic power. He was not a person with a good, kind mind. How was it? He did have a good mind and very, very well-attained person, and he developed the jhanas, he developed psychic powers, but then once he started to own those powers and think what a great person he was, conceit is what destroyed him. And that happens to some people. Sometimes you get great meditation, you think, look at me, I'm a great meditator. You tell your wife, I got jhana, na 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 na, you haven't got jhana, I have. That type of spiritual conceit, sometimes you see that, amongst sort of practitioners, always telling that I'm enlightened, other people aren't. That's spiritual pride and conceit. And once you start getting into that, you lose all your ability to get jhanas, and you also lose your psychic powers as well. So Devadatta would have had those powers, but he lost them as soon as he started to get conceited and think he was better than the Buddha, or even than the Buddha, or worse than the Buddha. That conceit is what destroyed the powers. So that's why in the end he couldn't do anything. And interestingly, people tell me that it's probably the same happened to the Sai Baba. Sai Baba is, a few years ago, many Sri Lankans had pictures of Sai Baba next to the Buddha on your shrines. And there's been many exposés of him, sexual abuse and just fraud, creating all this stuff just like any other magician would be, but not being real. And BBC did a documentary, just exposing the fraudulent way he would produce things as if they were miracles. But to me, it was almost more likely that he did have those powers when he was young, sort of a very great being. But because of conceit or because of thinking he was something, that he lost those powers. That's why you have to be very, very careful. If you do get a jhana, don't tell anyone. Don't show off. If you do have a power, keep it to yourself. Because otherwise it's just too easy to get proud. And you start losing things then. Remember, these aren't attainments. This is what happens when you disappear. It's not what you do. is what occurs when you don't do things. But then when you start owning them and doing them, they vanish. Could you please teach us in detail how to do reclining meditation without falling asleep? I have back and knee problems. I also sleep on my left and right sides, as well as on my back. Please help. Then on your front. You said your sides and your back. Just do reclining meditation on your front, whatever position you don't normally fall asleep in. And that usually works. And number 2, don't have a pillow. Do it on the floor. You can put, I said to one person, put your doona down or put some blankets down so it's soft enough. But don't do it on the bed, because somehow or other the mind thinks bed equals sleep. Floor, you don't go to sleep. And then you can do lying down meditation. It's very comfortable. You can relax your body, no aches and pains, and you get some nice meditation that way. But find a position, number 1, you don't normally go to sleep in, and number 2, sort of is away from the bed. Dear Venerable Ajahn, referring to Bahiya's story, who attained Arahut when he listened to the Buddha for the first time, what spiritual background qualities should be present to achieve this higher state? If you know the story of Bahiya, he was one of, I keep forgetting the number, 6 or 7 monks in the time of Kassapa the Buddha. This is the previous Buddha, and the 6 or 7 of them decided enlightenment or bust, so they went up a mountain. They had to get a ladder to get to the summit. Once they got to the top of the ladder, they threw the ladder away, so there was no way down. So no more food, no more water. They were going to meditate or die. I think one of them actually did become an arahat. Another one became a non-returner, and Bahiya died. He didn't get anything, as well as a few other people. And those monks actually reappeared when the Buddha was around, and Nopalinda Wacha was one of them. I forget who the other ones were, but there's a whole heap of them from that experience got reborn in the time of the Buddha. And as for Bahiya, he was born in the west coast of India, quite a ways away from where the Buddha was, so probably never met him when he was young, and became a sailor living on the coast. That was the obvious profession, and eventually he got shipwrecked, managed to find his way to shore, but lost all his clothes. And just out of modesty, he got some bark to put over his private parts. And when Indian people saw this fellow, he was naked, just wearing a bit of bark over his private parts, straight away they thought he was a holy man and started giving him things. And he thought straight away, this is a much easier way of living than just working and sailing and stuff like that. That's dangerous. You have to work hard. Now, as long as I just wear this stuff, I get fed and I get respect. This is a good little trade for me. I wish I'd have thought of this before. So he became an ascetic. And it's the same these days in India. If you just live simply and just act like an ascetic, people will feed you and look after you. So he was being fed, and he got a bit proud too. He thought, well, all these people are worshipping me. I must be something. I must be an arahat. And then his mate from the previous life, who was the anagami, listened to him and said, no, came actually down to see him. So it's obviously he had enough powers, he had some psychic powers, he could hear devas. So his mate came down and said, listen, you are not an arahat, you're not even close. But if you really want to, go and see the Buddha. This fellow who we never heard of before, who lives in the Ganges Valley. And according to the story, this Bahiya went to see the Buddha just in one night, which again shows that he did have some psychic powers, obviously left over from the previous life. And that's when he saw the Buddha, and the Buddha gave him a very simple teaching: in the seen, just the seen; the heard, just the heard; the cognized, just the cognized. So in the sense, just the sense; the cognized, just the cognized. And that was enough for Bahiya to become fully enlightened. And I've just given the same teaching to you. How many of you became fully enlightened? And the reason is you didn't have the same background. You never went up to a mountain and decided to meditate or bust. You never had that same commitment, to meditation. Just even over here, just when it gets a bit late, actually I'm probably going on too late, I want to go to bed. These guys didn't worry about the time of going to bed. They were up the mountain, this was it, we're not coming down again. So you can see just the nature of the man was why all the Buddha needed to do was the simple teaching, because he had prepared himself for a long time beforehand. Buddha mentioned that even Arahants too often reflect on these 5 aggregates. Why is it so important to reflect on these 5 aggregates? How to reflect on these 5 aggregates? The only key to understand the truth of existence is Nama and Rupa can be translated as mental and physical. Thank you. The Nama and Rupa, these are just, they call like the 2 sheaves of reeds with consciousness. Consciousness is one sheaf of reeds, Nama Rupa is the other sheaf of reeds. They depend upon one another. You take one of those sheaves of reeds apart and the other one falls over. And Nama Rupa is, you can say accurately, but just very briefly, that's the objects of consciousness. That's what you can be conscious of. Nama Rupa. Rupa is physical stuff, Nama is mental stuff. And without consciousness, you can't have Nama Rupa. Without Nama Rupa, you can't have consciousness. The two depend upon each other. You can't be conscious without being conscious of something. Which is why I tell people sometimes you get into a state of meditation, you're aware, but you're not really quite sure what you're aware of. You must be aware of something at every stage of meditation. But a lot of times, what we're aware of, we haven't seen before, we haven't experienced it before, we're not used to it, so we don't understand it. So if you're ever in a stage of meditation, you're aware, but you're not quite sure what of, stay there until you find out. What is it I'm aware of? You're always aware of something, otherwise you're unconscious. If there's no object of mind, then there's no consciousness. The two are necessary together. And as for the 5 khandhas, it's one way. The 2 main ways is talking about the 6 senses or the 5 khandhas. They're just alternatives. And the 5 khandhas is just splitting up this thing you call you into a body and mind. The body is the body, your physical body, plus the mind, the experience of happiness and suffering with every one of the 6 senses. Whenever you have a sensory experience, it's nice, it's not so nice, or it's somewhere in between. The affective part of it, of pleasure or pain. There is a perception, how you perceive things, and you can perceive things in so many different ways. Perception is not fixed, and it is not true for many of you. You see what you want to see, and you don't see what you don't like seeing. Perception is bent. It cannot be relied upon. And the next one is the sankharas, which is a catch-all. It includes thoughts and emotions, but the main part of that fourth khandha is will, chaitana. That's the main part of it. And the last khandha is consciousnesses. There's 6 different types of one. I always like making it plural because that makes it really interesting. It's not consciousness, but consciousnesses. You have 6 different types of consciousness. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and knowing. And they're totally different animals. Maybe talk about that another time because we're going a bit late. I'll go on to 9:30. If I don't finish, then don't finish. When I feel dullness or sleepiness during meditation, I find opening my eyes helps to regain alertness. Is this a useful way of dealing with dullness? Can I meditate effectively with open eyes, or does this prevent developing deeper states of meditation? Yes, it does prevent deeper states of meditation, but you can open your eyes for 5 minutes, but then close them again afterwards. And if it's the case that every time you close your eyes you get dull, it means because, number one, you haven't got enough energy, so develop more happiness and joy. Don't always do the same old thing and get bored. Meditate the other way round, with your back to the Buddha. Meditate in a different seat, meditate on the stupa, meditate anywhere but a new place. Don't put your hands in the same place, put them in a different place, put your hands on your head. Whatever it is, do something different and you will find you're awake, you're alive, and so you don't get so sleepy. When you're doing walking meditation, I've already done the how to do walking meditation, Matipasti or Mama Merawa in Simile. Yeah, whatever it was. But that's one way of doing walking meditation. If you're very dull and sleepy and you want to wake yourself up and everyone else in the room, then you can do kangaroo walking meditation. Now try it, because it actually works. You lose all your sloth and torpor. It's a great antidote to sloth and torpor. You start at the end of the path. You don't put your hands in your lap like this. You put your hands up here. And you don't walk left, right, you jump, hop. It's called kangaroo walking meditation. And if you do that, you have heaps of energy, and so does everybody else. They burst out laughing. It's a great way of compassionate helping other people to be happy. So give it a try, at least once. Your emptiness, can you please talk more about the approach of letting go of everything till the breath is present instead of trying to bring the attention to the breath? Well, it is, you let go of the, first of all, you're sitting down, so you let go of coming and going in your body. You're sitting here. If you let go of moving, of course you're still. And then you let go of past and future. And then you're in the present moment. Sometimes people say, what is the present moment? Well, the past is gone, the future is gone, what's left? It has to be the present moment. So you don't grab the present moment and throttle it. Present moment, you can stay here, no matter what. You let go of the past, you let go of the future, and what's left is the present. You let go of this inner commentary, this thinking. Just like if ever you watch, say, a cricket match on the TV, turn off the volume and just watch instead of having a commentary. And then you'll understand what we mean by being able to be aware without having these words going on in our head telling us what's going on. You don't need a commentary. If you want to know how bad the commentary is, and you're watching Australia play Sri Lanka cricket, turn on the Australian commentary, and then get on a Sri Lankan channel, maybe on sort of the Foxtel or something, and listen to the Sri Lankans do the comment on the same over. It'll be totally different. Australians, that's LBW. That's not LBW at all. The umpire is wrong. Commentaries are always biased, even yours. That's why don't listen to the commentary inside your head. And you turn the TV off, you realize this is what silence is. You're aware, but there's no words going on to distort the image. So you've let go. And now, you let go of everything else, whatever it is, until the only thing which is moving is your breath. So let go, you've already let go of thinking, you already let go of the past and future, you let go of the body moving, there's nothing else. And the breath just comes because it's the only thing which is moving. Breathing in, breathing out. And it's lovely to do it that way because then the breath is always relaxed and peaceful because you haven't made it come into you. Everything else is pushed aside, just like clearing off the plates on the table until just your plate is the only one left. So that's actually how we let go of other things until the only thing left, there is things like the breath. In your book, Good, Bad, Who Knows, you spoke about the miracle of successfully conducting an inaugural function amidst storm and rain. Can you share more details about that? Yeah, that's, we've got many monks in our monastery who are skeptics. And it's nice having monks who are skeptics. Westerners don't usually believe in anything which is supernatural. And one of those is Ajahn Brahm. He's got 2 MAs, one in business studies, the other one in electrical engineering. So he's an academic. He doesn't believe in rubbish stuff just because he keeps on at me about doing holy water and all that stuff. But this was one time he said, I was there, I saw it, this was a miracle. And I wrote about that I wrote about it also in the Good, Bad, Who Knows book. Because it needed to be written about to tell people what happened, and it was true. This was our 30th anniversary. This has to be the last story. There's a few questions. There's only 3 or 4 of them. I'll do these tomorrow. It's enough now. It's nice to go to bed with a nice psychic story. So it was the 30th anniversary of the Buddhist Society of Western Australia. And I think it's Sol Hanna, he was our president. And he mentioned to us, he said, it's the 30th anniversary this year, next year, let's do something sort of to celebrate. And he thought of doing something in the Esplanade in South Perth. And I'm a Leo rabbit, if I'm going to do things, do it big. Sadhu, 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 no way, it has to be sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. If I'm building a retreat centre, I want to do a good retreat centre. Whatever I do things like that. So I said, okay, if we're going to have a ceremony, let's do it big. South Perth, that's not the centre. Supreme Court Gardens in the centre of Perth. That's where, in this city, you do the big celebrations. So I said, we probably won't get it. But the 30th anniversary was on Wesak, and that full moon day, the real full moon day, was on a Sunday. Everything was perfect, and we rang up the Perth City Council. It was free that day. Book it. So we booked it, and huge amount of preparation to do this festival. With books, we've got a Buddha statue from Thailand, a big one. It's now in our hall in Nolamara. It's the one you see when I give a talk every Friday night. Behind that came a few days before. And we invited the Premier, that's the head of the state of Western Australia, which was Jeff Gallup at the time. We had the Thai ambassador as well, and all sorts of other dignitaries. And you know that you've seen the monks here. We don't just sit up here and give talks. When there's something to do, we get out there and we work. We get dirty. So we got up there early in the morning. It was pouring with rain. And the weather forecast said it's not going to stop all day. There was going to be a big, major storm coming. There was a couple of storms this year, but this was actually much more than any storm I've seen here. It was raining from the very early morning. Mike, were you there then? Yes. Okay, there we go. He was there. I know that you were there as well. There was a huge storm in the morning, and when I checked the weather forecast, it was going to hit the centre of Perth, I think at 7 a.m. Exactly the time we were going to do our big function. 7 p.m., sorry, yeah, p.m., yeah. So the storm was coming, it was already raining, and so we said, okay, let's keep on going. I must admit I did some pretty heavy chanting. I mean, really heavy stuff. Probably the heaviest chant I've ever done, to try and get some release from the rain. But it was raining, raining, raining. We all got soaked. And I must admit, the people who got soaked most of all were the Thai ladies. The ones who came to feed you, I think, on Monday, they were mostly there. And they were soaked to the skin, arranging the flowers, and they didn't care. And I was just so impressed. And just many other nationalities as well. You're probably soaked as well, Ananda. And then 3 times the Premier's office, they get a call through a mobile phone. This is the Premier, are you cancelling? So there's a storm coming at 7 o'clock. Surely you must cancel. I said, no way. And 3 times I said, no way. We weren't going to cancel. And I took control. And other people, I still remember, Brian Creek, he did this funeral. He was an ex-sailor. He came up to me and turned me around and said, Ajahn Brahm, we respect you, but you're making a fool of yourself. He said, I'm a sailor. I've looked at the way the barometric pressure is falling. This always means a really, really bad storm. You can't do this. You're wasting everybody's time and effort, and they're going to lose faith in you. I said, no, we're carrying on. And I still remember your son-in-law. He was a monk, Chris, at the time, and he came up to me and he said, Ajahn Brahm, please, for goodness sake, stop it. There's a storm coming. You're embarrassing all the monks as well. Yeah, no way. No way was I going to stop. And then it carried on raining. And then I was in the tent. I remember in the VIP tent, just helping the chairs. I was going to help anybody. And then I still remember Shirley Jackson, she's dead now too. She came running into the tent with crying. And I thought, oh God, what's happened now? Has someone injured themselves or some terrible event happened? She just grabbed me and pulled me out. Look at that. And it was dry. And the clouds had parted. And you could see the full moon. And that was incredible. You could actually see the full moon. The clouds had parted and it was dry. And then I went off to meet the Premier and just walked him in and everything, and it was going perfect. And we did the ceremony. It was a very short little shower, very short shower, not much at all. And that was all there was. And we finished the ceremony off. And as soon as we finished, bucketed down. And that night, Supreme Court Gardens, for those of you who live in Perth, that was under 2 inches of water. The freeway was flooded as well. The Kwinana Freeway, not the Mitchell. That was flooded as well. And the person who hired all of the marquees, Reese Hire, the managing director, sent me an email, or sent an email to the person who I delegated to do all of that, saying, we don't know who this Ajahn Brahm is, but can you please ask that monk who is going to win the horse racing today? I've still got that email somewhere. It's a great email. They were really so impressed. And there was many people never turned up that night. And afterwards I said, where were you? I said, didn't you cancel? I said, no, we did the ceremony. Impossible! Because in the eastern suburbs, the western suburbs, the north and south, it was a storm, it was raining. Trees were coming down. But over the centre of Perth, the time we did the ceremony, it was dry. And people just couldn't believe it. But those who were there, how many of you were there at the time? Was that pretty accurate? Yeah, exactly.
Very good. Actually rained straight after the monks.
Yeah, after the minister chanting, it started raining, yeah.
And when you were driving home, it was raining.
Yeah. After the event, it was pouring down all night. And that night, it stopped for us.
Actually, it's my wife said, let's go. It will stop.
Yeah, there we go. You see, always believe your wife. But that was actually one of those things that it shouldn't have happened, but it did. And it was very inspiring to see that these things can happen. The Thai ambassador was there. From that time on, she got so much faith in us that she was one when she went back to Thailand, arranged for the Royal Continent every year, because she saw what happened. Yeah, so it works. So sometimes, not all the time, if you're just having a sort of a party for your 60th birthday or somewhere, no, it's going to rain. It has to be something really special. And then the heavenly beings came to the party and kept it dry for us. So it's very inspiring that these things sometimes can happen when there's no reason why they should. So it's a nice way to go to bed. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Excellent. Okay, have a good night, everybody. Oh.